I remember saying I would never use heroin. Up until the age of 15, almost 16, I remember thinking I'd used every substance known to man in Australia by that time, mushies, LSD, speed, cocaine, trips, but I always said I would never touch heroin, and just before my 16th birthday I first picked up heroin. I never thought I would. I remember sitting in this little yellow Gemini out the front of the drug dealer's house. We're about to get on, thinking this is a bad idea, Old mate got in the car, we pulled up at Cabra, and I remember this dude called Wok, who I later went on to do a bit of prison with. Wok, he injected me with heroin for the first time in this dingy little flat in Cabramatta. There was like no furniture, it was just a drug dealer's house. And the moment he gave me that drug, I had never experienced anything like that. And it was from that, if anything had gone wrong, it was from that day forward that things had really changed. Up until then, I'd experimented with all different sorts of drugs, as I said. But it wasn't until that day that was like the beginning of the end. I became addicted, overnight. I had the obsession and compulsion to get and use more heroin on a daily basis. I never missed a day of using heroin since that first day for the next 17 years. Now, I spent a lot of time in prison in that time, and of course I didn't have access to heroin, but if I had access, I would be stoned, and there wasn't really a day that I didn't go without when it was around. Some of my rock bottoms would be homeless, under the bridge in Woolloomooloo, hanging out in withdrawals, hungry, angry, lonely, sad. All I wanted was to get on, and then another rock bottom would be hanging out in a dry cell in Darcy 1 at Silverwater Prison, vomiting, shitting, on a fucking concrete bed, with no mattresses, probably because they thought I was at risk of harming myself. I got on the methadone at age 21 after being in and out of prison many times. Now, what would happen is I'd get locked up, I'd be pissed, I'd be hanging out like a motherfucker, and I'd just think, and I heard methadone, I heard they give you methadone in jail, so I thought, you know what, this is probably going to be my life for a long time to come. So I got on the methadone. I got told at the time, Danny, you'll just get on it for 6 months, you'll have a better quality of life, and you'll be all right, but as it turns out, I got stuck on that for the next 13 years. But every time I'd get locked up, at least within the next 24 hours, I'd end up getting dosed. So I was first locked up at 15 or 16 in boys' homes. I think it was Cobham. I was on first instance warrants. Back then, you used to get $100 a day, or they'd keep you locked up for every $100. I remember I had like $3,500 worth of fines. So my first introduction was to boys' homes. I remember it being a really scary moment, being locked up, not getting bail for the first time, not having someone bail me out, thinking, Danny, you probably need to learn yourself a lesson. By the age of 18, on my 18th birthday, I spent my 18th birthday in Parramatta prison. That was another scary process. I ended up getting into a fight. I somehow stole cigarettes. Someone gave me a couple of cigarettes as they come through the reception, so I'd already been processed, and he slipped me a couple of bungers, and I was unaware to the dangers I was putting myself into. I lit one of them up, and one of the other boys asked me for one of them, and next day I got out of the cell. It must have been like A-wing. It was on, I got bashed. So my first day in Parramatta prison, on my 18th birthday, I got fucking into a brawl out at the front of the wing. Scary introduction, to prison. It was always drugs, the getting and using more drugs. It's all I cared about. I had that obsession and compulsion to use, and I would do almost anything it would take to get it. It started off with, it was just the need to get drugs. On the 6th of February 2001, I escaped from prison. I'd been in custody around about 6 months. I had a big pile of cash stashed outside with my partner, and as you could imagine, they'd been itching at me constantly. She was pregnant as well. I'd spent a good 18 months in this prison at Old Silverwater, where I just spotted this weakness in the security defence. I thought one day, I reckon I could get up there. In fact, I had tried to escape from that jail 2 other times. lucky I never got pinched for that, because I would have been in E-classo from then. But as it happens, on the 6th of February, it was my partner's birthday. I gave her a call on the phone. I said, Michelle, I said, if I could come home tonight, would that be okay? It's like I wanted her permission. She just rolled her eyes, of course, and just said, yeah, Dan. And sure enough, that night I attended this religious event in the visiting area. It was something I was already doing. They had good coffee and biscuits. It was some little time out, and that night I managed to scale a 24-foot fence at the end of prayer time, when everyone was in there singing Kumbaya. I managed to duck out the back and scale the fence. I got up on top of that fence and ran like a motherfucker, bro. I ran down Holker Street towards Parramatta River, where I'd cut my legs to pieces on the razor wire because I'd been busted while I was up on top of the fence by one of the officers. So the chase was straight on. Ran down towards Parramatta River, where I jumped a couple of fences with one arm black and blue from my shoulder to my wrist. I swam across the shark-infested river, Parramatta River, to freedom, mate. I managed to get away. The water police, Polair, it was on. The chase was on, but I was in mud up to my neck in the riverbed on the other side, just clawing my way through, and they couldn't see me, man. I was literally covered in mud, and I come up on Parramatta Speedway and managed to get away, man. Made it to Perth and got pinched on Valentine's Day. I often say what a romantic story that was, you know. I escaped with another fella by the name of Patrick. I won't say his last name, but he'd been getting interviewed by Leppington Police just previous to that, right, at the jail. We both got caught. He got caught like 24 hours later. I got caught 7 days later. A week later or 2 weeks later, we're both in MRRC. He's in Fordwick 6, I'm in Goldsmith 13, and he gets a message up to me from one of the sweepers saying, Danny, we're pleading not guilty. I remember thinking, fuck off. Pat, next thing, I'm living down in Fordwick 6 with Pat. We're 2 out again on the other side of the jail now. We're back in Baxo again. And he's come up with this plan that we're going to plead not guilty, saying that, you know, we felt threatened for our lives, that because he'd been getting interviewed by these coppers, that something was going to go down. And sure enough, I managed to manipulate, or I shouldn't say manipulate, but I had this chaplain, Peter Baines, who came to court and literally lied on the stand for us and said something. He basically said that I had come to him thinking I was in threat for my life, so I had to escape. Turns out I ended up getting 21 days, bro. The day my son was born, it was at Liverpool Hospital, and this is a disgusting story, bro. You know, like myself and his mum had been using amphetamines, speed at the time. Ice wasn't even out back then. We're talking in 2001, or it wasn't where I was. Yeah, I remember the day she was giving birth, I ducked into the toilets, had a shot of speed, and I bought her one out too. Like, fuck, it's fucked up. You know, that should have been a special time for me, but all I cared about was getting stoned, you know. I was such a shit father for the first 10 years of my son's life, you know. My first 10 years of my son's life, or maybe the first 8 years of my son's life, I was completely absent, you know. My mum ended up getting custody of my son, and also his mum's family got custody of my son. Yeah, it was a difficult, I was just so caught up in getting stoned, you know, and on drugs that lucky my beautiful mum started to bring my son up, you know, and I truly think it was probably the best thing that could have been for him, you know. I'd have moments of being with my son, and back then I weighed 60 kilos, you know, and look, drugs had me in this complete delusion. I didn't realise how fucked up I was, you know. I honestly thought, you know, that this is just the cards I've been dealt and this is my life, and I never thought that it would ever be any different, you know. I was very grateful that my mum would look after my son. You know, fast forward to today, just to let you know, like in recovery, I've got a daughter, and it's completely different feelings, you know, attached to it. But Yeah, so I wasn't aware of the damage I was doing as a father. Thank God my son had my mum, to look after him. So on the 15th of September 2009 was my first day clean this time around. Blessed today to be 14 years, 11 months and 4 days clean and sober. I have not had a drink or a drug in well over a decade today. And the last time I went to detox, I took drugs into there with me. I used heroin while I was in detox. I got out of detox and I went to a short-term rehab in Roselle. I went there hanging out because I'd used heroin up until the day before I got out of detox. So when I got out of detox, when I was meant to be clean, I landed myself in a 28-day rehab, hanging out. And this time, finally, after so many different attempts, I started to do things differently, I remember particularly, there's a few things that I did. I started writing this little journal each day. It's the first time I'd ever done this. What did I do good today, Danny, and what could I do better tomorrow? And also I wrote down 5 things that I was grateful for. This is ridiculous. This is the stuff I'd heard other people talk about. So you know what? Fuck it. I'll give it a crack. I ended up going from that rehab to another rehab, a longer term program. I'll give them a shout out, Glebe House. That place changed my life, That place is the foundation of my entire recovery. And on Christmas Day, 2009, I was allowed to go home on a day leave. It was a bad choice, and in fact, the rehab knocked it back first, and they knocked it back, and I was sitting in this little office away from the staff. I was crying because I was full of shame and guilt. I thought my mum's going to be so disappointed that I wasn't going to come home, but I was also happy, And the boss came in, she said, "Oh, Danny," she was Scottish, she said, you can go, which was crazy. And anyway, that day, on my way out to Livo, I got off the train in fucking Cabramatta, bro. I'm fucking 60 days clean. And I get off the train, my son and my mum and my whole family's waiting for me, Christmas Day, and I get off the train at Cabra on my way out there to get on. I'm about to throw it all away, and you wouldn't believe the Vietnamese community don't want to sell drugs on fucking Christmas Day. For some reason, I could not find a dealer, mate. I'd been a little bit out of touch. I didn't have somebody's number, and I couldn't get on that day, and Mum's ringing me. I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna go. So the first time I didn't pursue it, I could have went to Fairfield to get on. I went home. I'm sitting around the family Christmas table, full of shame and guilt. There's 15 loved ones, neighbours. I'd hurt, stolen, robbed every single one of those people at the table. And that day, I left there. I left my family, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna go up the cross. I'm gonna get on the coke. I'm gonna get on the heroin, and this is the day my life changed forever. I stood at the turning point. I'm at Town Hall Station. To my right was King's Cross. I know I've got cash on me. Bless my family, gave me some money for Christmas, I'm going to go up there, I'm going to get on the coke and I'm going to get on the heroin. Or across the road was the bus, the 431 that took me back to rehab. And that day, I thought to myself, what am I going to do? I know what's going to happen. If I go up there and get on, I'm either going to end up dead, because I'll overdose. I'll end up back in jail. That's definitely my history. But I don't know what would happen if I got on that bus. And that day I made a different decision. For the first time in my life, I changed my mind. And mate, a miracle happened. I never come close to picking up another drink or a drug since Christmas Day 2009. I'm not suggesting just a miracle happened. I did nothing. I started to really work hard on my program. I started doing a bunch of 12-step fellowship meetings. I started doing counselling. I started telling the truth. In all my time, in 17 years of using heroin, I never knew that you could change your mind. I never had the tools. I'd heard it said a million times, if you don't pick up the first drug, you can't get stoned. But I just thought, that's ridiculous. It's fucking stupid, And that day, I did a little bit of consequential thinking. My 49 attempts at rehab had taught me something. And that day, I thought, if I do this, I know what's going to happen, but what happens if I don't do this, And that day, mate, honestly, for the next 3 days, I felt full of anxiety. I was walking up and down the stairs in rehab, and this counsellor, Mark, yelled out to me. He said, "Danny, what's going on?" And I told him, I said, I was about to throw it all away. I'm fucked. I'm going to do this again, Mark. I'm not going to last. Give me next week. I'll probably be on it. And mate, I never come close to picking up another drug again, you know. So an absolute miracle happened for me on Christmas Day 2009. When I was in rehab in 2009, around about that miracle moment where Christmas, I started to really consider, you know, like the damage I'd done to my son, you know. He's now 23. Back then I thought one of my dreams for the future would be to have a good relationship with my son. You know, I knew that I had no relationship with him. You know, our relationship consisted of him coming in, jumping on my bed in the morning when I was living in the garage at my mum's house, and I wouldn't see him till the next day, you know. I wanted to build a relationship with him, and it wasn't until I was about 5 years clean before I really started focusing on that relationship. I started bringing him every day. My boy's damaged, man. Like, he's damaged from my behaviours and probably his mum too. I don't want to put any blame on his mum, but you know, today the relationship I've got with my boy is pretty special. You know, we speak most days, every second day. You know, he's going through his own stuff at the moment, but I am definitely a good father to him. Because of the stuff I do on social media, he often has people send him content saying, "Is this your dad?" Or "I seen your dad here, I seen your dad there," and he gets incredibly proud of that stuff, you know. So although he's still quite affected, and he can't quite let go of not having a mum and a dad who were present in his life, he had a beautiful family. You know, he had the rest of my family looking after him. It's definitely something that's had an impact on him. And my daughter, on the other hand, you know, me and her spent, at the moment I've got full custody of my daughter. Her mum's in rehab. I haven't been with her mum for a long time. My daughter's 7 years old. So it's a really beautiful, challenging time in our lives at the moment. And probably one of the most scary things I thought of was my daughter losing her mum, because she's obsessed with her mum, you know. But we've got to this point now, we're about 3 months in or 2.5 months in, and we've just got this beautiful routine. You know, every morning she comes in and jumps. We've got a cat too. Every morning it's like, "Good morning, Daddy." Like, she'll say, "Good morning, Daddy." She'll come and sit down in front of the heater. Leo, the cat, will come and sit with her. And then we'll maybe spend like a moment in bed. She'll jump on me, and we'll take a moment just to put down the screens and just sort of give her a bit of a cuddle. So 8.5 years ago, I broke up with my daughter's mum. In fact, her and I broke up. One of the reasons we broke up was because I didn't want to have children and she did, right? Now, my daughter's only just turned 7. So if you do the math, it doesn't quite work out. She fell pregnant not so long after breaking up with me, okay? And the whole time through the pregnancy, we knew, I'd stayed friends with her too, you know, as I have with all of my exes. The whole time through the pregnancy, we knew that it wasn't my child, right? It's just so weird. And we knew who the dad was too, but he'd abandoned her. He wasn't there. I'd stayed friends with her. I came back on this mad trip from America 5 days after Amalia had been born, right? I'm sitting at her brother's house with her and the baby, and Amber goes to me. She's got big hands like you know? And I'm getting a little bit teary because I just want to, like, sharing this story is just so beautiful. And I remember thinking, this is just a desperate mum wanting a father figure for her kids, you know? And then she said, and Amalia fell asleep in my arms, okay, at the age of 5 days old, and her mum said to me, "Oh, she has never fallen asleep for anyone else." Anyway, she convinced me. It made no sense at all. This is the dumbest thing ever, but she convinced me that somehow I could be the dad. I hadn't had sex with her for well over a year, but she somehow convinced me that maybe Amalia did look like me, you know. She said that she looked like me. I ordered a DNA test, right? Now, I can't explain why this happened, but for the next 3 weeks while that DNA test came, I sort of thought maybe she was my daughter, you know, like some weird thing. And 3 weeks later, the DNA test arrived, and it was like 10 million to 1 that she was my kid. But I just kept her from that day onwards. The dad has never been there for her, and over the next year, I spent more and more time with her, and Marley had started to talk, and this is where her mum is really fucked up. Her mum said to me, up until that time I was Uncle Danny, right, which is really weird to say that, right? And her mum said to me, I think she should call you Dad. And I don't know, for some reason I said, yeah, all right, why not? And that was the day I became her father, and 7 years later now, I've got full custody of her, and it's only temporarily while her mum gets herself well. But me and her have got the most incredible relationship, and I get quite teary too because my son missed out on that. Recovery has given me this greatest gift, and the greatest gift is not being abstinent. Of course, being abstinent is definitely why I have this, but it's just having this beautiful relationship with this little girl who looks up to me for everything, and I just can't explain the amount of happiness. It's the most beautiful thing ever. Look, I'm in an incredible position today where I share my stories through social media, through a whole bunch of different platforms, and I have people reach out to me on a daily basis. An absolutely incredibly powerful position to be in. I'm so honoured to have people reach out, and there's one thing I say to every single person. Number one is, I can't imagine how you're feeling. There's nothing worse. Nobody wants to have someone telling them that they know how they feel. Like I've experienced it. I spent 17 years in the pain, hurt and misery, jails, institutions. But what I don't know is how you feel, and I've discovered that when I say to people that, I can't imagine how you're feeling right now, but I want to encourage you just to be brave, do things differently. There's so many resources available to the people who know where to look. I'm more than happy to share all my advice with you, Be brave, have some courage, and just make that next right decision. And basically, I say the same thing to everyone. Go to detox, rehab, and I'm a member of the 12-step fellowship. Narcotics Anonymous has been a huge part of my story. But I've also, through sharing my stories, I've connected with people from all over the world on all different kinds of journeys today. Today I can't believe that I'm having open conversations with people about, microdosing, people, medical marijuana. And today I went on a cruise not so long ago, and they announced over the PA where you could smoke pot on the fucking boat. Now, the world has changed, and I also understand that, recovery looks different for everyone as well. And who am I to put my total abstinence-based recovery on other people? But let me tell you, for a long time, I was brainwashed by by this total abstinence model. I thought the only way is the way I'm doing. It's like I thought. And thank God I don't feel like that anymore, because for me, absolutely, if I pick up a drink or a drug, I will be locked up in no time. I like to think that anyway, because it keeps me sort of accountable, but I also understand that recovery equals your level of happiness, I think, I often say to people, what's your number? On a scale of 0 to 10, 0 equals you're sad, miserable, unhappy, life is fucked, and 10 equals you're chuffed and full of gratitude. What's your number? And if they say their number is 5, 6, maybe they need to have a look at 3, 4. Maybe they need to look at doing something differently. But if they honestly tell me their number's higher than a 6, 7, I think, keep doing what's working for you. Who am I to say what equals happiness? I'm also the founder of the world's first video journaling platform. It's called Encapsulator. We allow individuals to record and document their hopes, their dreams, their fears, and their future aspirations into a private space to express themselves without any fear of judgment. It's a video journaling platform that I hope to have in every household in the world. It's a 24/7 self-counseling tool available in the palm of your hand. So if you're struggling, pull up the app and you maybe go to the Recovery and Beyond program. That's my personal program. It says, how are you feeling today, Dan? I say, what? I'm kind of struggling, I feel hopeless. When we verbalize our fears out loud. We break down some of the barriers. We improve the chances and likelihood of people seeking the professional help that they need, you know. A problem shared is a problem halved, and I think that right in itself, and when I get Encapsulator into the right hands, I truly hope and believe that it's going to be up there amongst the top 5 mental health apps in the world. But going back to that mural, Dream Big 2027, it's part of that's got New York in the background. I see myself in my office in Manhattan overlooking New York. It's also got a big mural of Australia up on my wall as well, okay, because represent First Nations people, Australia as well. But my dream is to be living between Sydney and Manhattan by 2027, looking after my daughter, giving my family everything they possibly want. And I also just want to say, like, it's happening. Like, I know it's going to happen, you know. I truly believe it. So, yeah. Another crazy thing is that a coach said this to me years ago, and I remember when she said it, made me cringe. She said, Danny, she said, you just want to be famous, you know? And I said, Paris, her name was. I said, Paris, that's silly, don't say that. She said, just stop and think about it. And look, man, I light up the most when I'm up on stage. I'm talking to hundreds of people. I've had these opportunities to do this. I light up when I'm on social media. I studied a counselling degree. I did 2.5 years. Just before I finished that degree, I thought to myself, the last thing on fucking earth I want to do is sitting in a little counselling room listening to your shit all day. I'm super, what's the word? Like, I take on other people's vicarious trauma. I'm super sensitive. So listening to people's one-on-one trauma, and especially having my beautiful 7-year-old daughter, I can't do it. I break down, you know. So the thing that lights me up the most is working with groups. I run groups 4 days a week as well. At 11 a.m. most days I run a life skill development workshop where I help individuals break the isolation, get connected with other people doing good things. I've got about 30 different topics where I share all my tips, tricks and hacks on how to plug into the higher forces of gratitude. Just on that, like, I love my life. I'm living the dream. I smile way too much, and it's my job as a man in recovery and also just a human being to get out here and share a positive message of love and hope to anyone out there struggling.